Pretty soon I'm going to say, oh, maybe we need waterfall again. Okay. I always do this exercise everywhere I go. I've probably done it hundreds and hundreds of times now. I will ask, over the last few days, really over the last month or two, what are the things that have happened in your work that have made it difficult for you to get your work done? And let's gather those into some kind of Post-it note thing, right? You do these, you're Agile people. I mean, that's what you do is you use Post-it notes. So this was a group of 20 people. In 3 minutes, they came up with 50 items. Now, you'll recognize a lot of these items. That's not really important what they specifically are. I've made a list of about 200 specific items that are slightly different than each other. But in this one, I'm going to look at see a couple here. Let's see if my pointer still works. The big ones like context switching, needless meetings, I just say meetings, technical blockers, multitasking, dependencies on others, unclear requirements. These are the things that make it difficult for us to get our work done. What have I learned over time? Is there's a lot of these problems. They stay with us. If I go back to a company a year later, they still have the same problems in the last few weeks or months, and they're everywhere I go. This is really common stuff. I can easily determine the spread of the problems I'm going to see when I go into a company. I will see these things over and over again. So we need to start asking questions when we see that kind of a pattern. Why is it so profuse? Why is it so persistent? Why is it so pervasive? These are the kinds of questions I want to be at least investigating. So in 1999, I worked at a place. We had 200 software developers. I was about 45 years old. And the average programmer was probably 22, 23 years old. So they looked a lot like this. And we'd take on our work to do our iteration. This was before Agile was a thing. But people were starting to experiment with iterations. And at the end of every iteration, we were going to do what we would now call a retrospective. In those days, they called it a lessons learned. So in the first lessons learned, I noticed 3 major problems. Now, I was just one programmer amongst 200 programmers, but I noticed these were the 3 big things that came forward. Our estimates were off, and they weren't really helping us. The requirements weren't well understood, and they kept changing. At the end of the iteration, we had these problems. So now we're going to decide, what are we going to do about it? Well, what are we going to do about it? They thought, well, we need to get better at estimates. We need to get better at understanding the requirements. We need to get better at controlling the changes. Sound typical? I think these are closely related problems. It doesn't matter what the problems were, but the pattern is what I want to talk about now. We went off to do our next iteration. At the end of that second iteration, we did a retrospective. I noticed 3 big problems. What do you think those were? Anybody want to shout it out? Estimates were off. And it's this stuff. We don't need to go into detail. And how are we going to solve it? The exact same way. Let's get better at it. Let's get some training. Let's practice. And let's go back and do some more work. So the third iteration. We charge off, all happy to be working. They weren't completely depressed yet. Charge off and do our work. And then at the end of the iteration, we do our retrospective. What do you think? Yeah, we don't even need to think about it. So I noticed a pattern. And in those days, if we noticed a pattern, we wanted to talk about it, right? We'd give it a name and we'd start talking about it. If we see a pattern, that means something going on over and over again, same cycle. Every iteration, same pattern. We're going to give it a name. And I called this the cycle of continuous no improvements. We don't want that, right? We want the opposite of that. So, if we see something like this over and over, then we need to ask, what's going on here? And I stood up in the meeting and I said, this is what I think is going on. We're looking at symptoms here and not necessarily problems. And that's an important thing. To me, it's really important to understand when we're looking at symptoms rather than problems. I think all of these things are symptoms of underlying problems. Needless meetings is a symptom of something else. Unclear requirements is a symptom of something else. Almost all of these are symptoms and not problems, and we cannot solve symptoms. What if I have a cold and I have a headache, I'm congested, I have a sore throat? So I take aspirin or something for the headache. I take a decongestant. I take something for the sore throat, and now I feel better, but I still have the cold. But I feel good enough to go to work, so I go to work, and now I give everybody the cold. We didn't solve the problem. We just dealt with some symptoms. What happens when we deal with symptoms is we hide the problem. We no longer need to focus on it. That's just not a good thing to do. So, I think there's a bigger conundrum. Consider this. Can we solve problems? Now, this is something I see over and over again. Often today's solution becomes tomorrow's problem. And if that happens, we didn't really solve anything. We just maybe moved the problem to a different spot, or made it look different. Now, that doesn't mean that we will always not be able to solve problems, but this is what I call the problem with problems. It's going to depend on what domain we're in, and we'll come back to domains later. All of you have learned about domains. If you do Agile stuff, you've been in enough conferences, you know all about that, but we'll come back to that later. One specific kind of problem I want to deal with is what I call the misplaced focus of management. Management is focused on solving problems. We have problems, let's solve them. That's the management mind, right? So, one big problem is it's hard to manage things. So what do we want to do? That's an easy solution. We're going to solve for that by making it easy to manage things. Guess what happens? This is a problem. Because of this quote, so much of what we call management consists in making it difficult for people to work. Now, if that's true, we better do something about it. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if there's nothing I'm telling you today that I think of as truth. It's just things to think about. This quote comes from, supposedly, Peter Drucker. So if you ever find a real reference to him actually saying that, I would love to have it. I'd like to know where this started. Everybody quotes him, but when you track it back, there's no proof that he actually said this. But whether he said it or not, I love this. I'm pointing to my monitor down here. I should be pointing up there, right? So what we can do, here comes the circle, so watch for this. So not much is getting done, and it makes it hard to manage things. So let's make it easy to manage things. But according to Peter Drucker, that's going to make it harder to get the work done. When it's harder to get the work done, well, not much is going to get done. And now we're in a cycle. They call that a vicious cycle. It's going to get harder to manage things. We're going to try to put more management on it. Pretty soon we're going to say, maybe we need waterfall again. Okay.